City recently approved a switch from Yawkey Way near Fenway Park to its previous name, Jersey Street. That decision follows contentious debate over the city's racial climate and sense of history. As the owner of the Boston Red Sox to his death in 1976, Tom Yawkey has been criticized for his last-place record on racial inclusion. But the honor of a street name has also been justified mainly by the philanthropic legacy of the Yawkey Foundation. With a perspective on both sides of that equation is the state representative from the South End and part of the Fenway, Byron Rushing. Thank you very much for being with us.
Great to be here.
First of all, just your opinion about what the street should be called.
Well, I do think that it should not be called Yawkey Way. So I was always supported any of attempts to get the name changed. And then after the Red Sox was sold, of course, the new owner was really concerned about the reputation that the team had around race. And so when we had the owner suggesting that the name be changed, I supported that completely, and I'm very happy that the city has made the decision it's made.
What about why this is happening now? And it's 15 years after that expose in the book by Howard Bryant about Yawkey's record. What's going on?
Well, I think that people have just refocused on many of the names that we have in the city. But here is one that has been coming up, periodically over several years. I think people need to also remember that when it was named Yawkey Way, it was a year after Tom Yawkey had died. It was sort of like a memorial to him. But most people in the black community, of course, were focused on many other things. We were in the midst of the whole controversy over integrating the schools. And so at that moment, this one was not seen as some large issue. It came up in the community several years ago, actually, because of the Yawkey's Foundation's penchant for naming buildings after Yawkey, after they gave major contributions to those buildings. And there were a number of people, and this was actually a little over 10 years ago, who were very concerned after a major grant was given, worthwhile grant and wonderful grant to the Boys Club in Roxbury, that they wanted the name of the Boys Club in Roxbury to be changed from the Roxbury Boys Club to the Yawkey Boys Club, which they did do. And there were a number of people who raised the issue then, but of course, it was, in that sense, it was not a public building. And so it was a nonprofit organization that had received this very important grant, and they decided they wanted to have it called that. But that was the first time that I ever heard the Yawkey Foundation raise the whole issue about their concern about Yawkey's reputation. And so I was not surprised at the arguments that they gave once the decision was made to apply to have the name changed on Yawkey Way.
Well, shortly before the decision was made by the city, there was this organization that Jack Connors, I think, was involved with. They bought a full-page ad in the Globe, which by the way, was in favor of the name change.
That's right. Yeah. This was the
ad itself was.
The ad wanted to keep the name on Yawkey Way, and they did that by having a divided ad. On one hand was all of the donations that they had made, worthwhile donations to a whole range, of course, of organizations in the metropolitan Boston area. And then on the other side of the ad, it said "taketh," and it had the Yawkey sign, which of course, and then under that was nothing. And a lot of people, and after that ad came out, joined in on the of making comments on the need for changing the name, because they did feel that the foundation had sort of gone over the line. It was all those sort of borderline extortion in this ad. Yes.
I'm still trying to figure out what was really the message here, because is it saying that taketh, meaning there's going to be a loss of support, or is that taketh with a question mark? Did that mean that what have the opponents done lately?
Well, I think most people saw it that if you take the sign away, you are going to lose something. And which on one hand, I don't believe. I don't believe the Yawkey Foundation is going to stop giving, and they're certainly not going to stop giving to organizations in the Black and Hispanic and Asian communities of Boston, like they have done already. I think they got a little too excited about this, because for us, the issue was of the name was, of course, of honoring Tom Yawkey without any suggestion that what he had, his position on race was not harmful to this community. And it was definitely harmful to this community. It was harmful. He never spoke out against the clear racial prejudice of his staff, which has been documented. He's never spoken out against that. He never spoke out against the fact that Black people in Boston felt uncomfortable going to games, of Red Sox games, and that continued until they started to hire not players of color, but actually stars, and many of them, of course, were Hispanic. Right.
You take me back to a time in Boston when I seldom saw Black people wearing baseball hats that wore Red Sox hats. Was that Yawkey, or was that just the fans, the whole climate of being in the park?
No, it was the climate, but I am convinced that climate was certainly not condemned by Tom Yawkey. Tom Yawkey never spoke out against it. If you go all the way back to the practice when Jackie Robinson came here and someone yells this epithet over the loudspeaker system. No one ever believed that Yawkey did that. No one believed that Yawkey was there when it happened. But he definitely knew it happened, and he never spoke out against it. There is no record of him ever speaking out against that.
Finally, also in your district, another street name that maybe ought to be changed, Columbus Avenue. Any ideas here?
See, my feeling about all street names is most street, unless you're talking about the Back Bay, most street names in Boston have had previous names, right? Washington Street used to be called Orange Street, right? And of course Columbus Avenue was Pynchon Street. And so just like we changed names then, I think we can always review the names of streets. I just think it should be done in a civil way, and we should have a group of people making that decision. Interestingly, we of course still have Yawkey commuter station on the commuter line that's closest to the Red Sox and Fenway Park, and so we have introduced legislation so that name will be changed, but that the decision about what the new name should be will be made by a representative group of people in the city.
Thank you very much for being with us.
It's always good to be here.
State Representative Byron Rushing.